Getting right down to the wire. Valero is about to close its Benicia, California. It's basically San Francisco refinery. Valero to import fuel to Bay Area after idling the Benicia refinery. I want you to hear what Gavin Newsom says about this. For him, it sounds like this is a massive win. It's not. It's just delaying the inevitable. Let's get into it. Here we go. For those of you that haven't fully caught on to this story, what you've got is a couple of refineries in California that are being shut down. They're shutting themselves down because they've just said, hey, too many regulations. We're not making enough money. This isn't viable. California's been pushing us out for years. We're done. Boop, we're done. Phillips 66 is closing down their Wilmington, and Valero is closing down their Benicia refinery, LA and San Francisco. It's going to reduce gasoline production by about 22%. Price of gas is going to go up. How much? $8, $12? We're going to talk about it. Here's that background video story. Here we go.
City officials and small businesses are trying to remain optimistic after today's surprise announcement from oil giant Valero Energy. The closure of the Benicia refinery would be a loss of millions of dollars.
And this was April of 2025. Now we're coming up on the April of 2026 closure, and that's what this story is it's given us a little bit of the background. But this is from April of 2025.
Annually in revenue for this small town.
ABC 7 News reporter Ansar Hassan has more on the potential impact of the closure.
For a quarter century, the Valero refinery has been an economic powerhouse for the city of Benicia. But on Wednesday came a surprise announcement that it may close next April.
I would have been more prepared for a sale. I am surprised that they're suggesting a complete closure and ceasing operations. That is definitely surprising and distressing news that we heard today.
City Manager Mario Giuliani says Valero generates millions of dollars in revenue, which are vital for this small town. But Valero made it known for some time its frustration and concerns with the high costs and strict environmental regulations in California. Giuliani says discussions are underway with state officials and Valero about what comes next.
It is the newest refinery on the West Coast. It produces a significant amount of gasoline for the California market. I cannot foresee a possibility where that refinery just ceases operation altogether.
In a statement to ABC,
and that's what everybody's thinking. They're like, what? What's going on? We're doing what? Why? Well, because the refinery is just fed up. Not just fed up. They've got options, right? Sell the thing. Idle it temporarily, figure out options, close it down. I mean, you've got all those options, and they just went right to plan C, not even plan B, plan C. We're closing it down. We're done.
ABC 7 News, Valero confirmed that it submitted a notice to the California Energy Commission of its current intent to idle, restructure, or cease refining operations at Valero's Benicia refinery by the end of April 2026. California Governor Gavin Newsom responding to the news at a press conference earlier in the day.
Beginning last night, we had all hands, and we're in the process of addressing any anxiety that may be created or any market disruption that may be created by that announcement.
Giuliani says news of Valero's possible departure will impact the city's budget process for next year, which begins in May. In addition to possible loss of jobs and revenue, is the impact on the city at large.
What's crazy about this is that this has been an ongoing story for decades and decades and decades, right? Where California is just so hell-bent on green energy and swapping out gas for electric cars, even though there's not a chance in hell we're doing that on mass scale anytime soon. We just don't have the power grid for it. Everything is made out of gas or oil, or takes gas to get it from point A to point B, right? It's so integral to our economy and so integral in California. And yet all of a sudden there's this, we're closing? What are we going to do? Well, that's what we're working through. We're literally working through the timeline. Valero to import fuel. So now we're importing fuel. Oil giant Valero will not permanently close its Benicia refinery this year, but instead will idle operations there and import gasoline to the Bay Area, Governor Gavin Newsom's office said Tuesday. Valero will continue producing gasoline through April and then supply the Northern California market through a combination of existing inventories and imports, Newsom's office said. All right. We're going to get back to that, but this is, let me get to, this is the energy report that kind of set off all of the motions for so many of the stories that you see. California energy and fuel policies, a clear and present threat to national security and force readiness? ? This was by Stan Ellis, Professor Mishi from the University of Southern California, and 𝗪𝗧𝗛𝗏. Now, 𝗪𝗧𝗏, he reached out to me and said, hey, let's talk about, what you got going on. And so eventually we connected via text. And I texted him on this story. And the thing that I found interesting is, and I'll read it for you. And I didn't ask Mike if I could use this text, but I know he's fine with it. And he's a former refinery controller. So this is what they're attempting to do. One of my friends told me that they can import and export jet and diesel. Currently, Valero cannot import or export gasoline. Right now, Professor Mishi is thinking that the ships that are being offloaded at the docks are doing so maximum capacity. Valero is running the crude unit at reduced rates right now so that the heavy conversion units will be brought up from the feed from their tankage to get the tanks down to minimum level in order to take them out of service. So they're still running the refinery, but they're running it on a reduced level before they fully idle it. So they're getting as much out of their tanks as they need. And they've also got a state inspection coming up that they can't move around. So they're still refining. They're bringing it down. And what they're doing is they're backfilling what they would have normally full capacity refining, not refining, but gas production, whatever they're producing. They're backfilling at the dock. And let's keep going. In order to get the tanks down to minimum level in order to take them out of service. The bottom line is by no later than April, we'll be importing nearly 45% of our gasoline and 35 to 40% of our jet fuel from South Korea, Singapore, and India. This is where California is going to be getting its gas and jet fuel. South Korea, Singapore, and India. When you've got plenty of oil right there in California, but because of regulations and because of just huge pushback and fines and just basically massive pushback on the oil and gas industry in California because they're so green, that Valero wants to just basically dip out and say, yeah, we're done here. We'll work with you. And that's the story, right? We're going to work with you, but we're closing this thing down. And all they're doing with this is delaying the inevitable, in my opinion. Again, I'm a real estate guy, but I'm learning about oil. More than 400 people are employed at Valero's Benicia Refinery. It's unclear how many employees will be affected. The company said it's preparing a worker adjustment and retraining notification. Newsom touted the plan, and he's continuing to work with Valero to ensure the reliability of fuel in California. This guy literally, he has been so hell-bent on kicking big oil out of California because it's part of that whole green energy thing. We're so much better than everybody else. Less emissions. We're all going to drive our electric car. No, it's just not possible. It's numerically, math, it's not possible. You can't go all in on the whole 2035. Oh, we're not going to sell any more gas cars by then. I mean, it's just absolute nonsense, right? So here's what Newsom says. While others point fingers to spread fear and divide us, California is doing the actual work, collaborating with industry, using data and transparency to protect consumers, and building the all-of-the-above energy future America needs. That's what Grissom Newsom said. Here's the short version. This is just delaying the inevitable, which is this refinery shuts down and California's gas production and jet fuel and everything else you produce at a refinery gets reduced by like 22%. So when you reduce supply and you've still got California is an enormous consumer of gasoline. They've got the 5th largest economy in the world if they were our own country. They suck up a lot of gas and oil products, right? And so instead, they're going to be importing from South Korea. Oh, that sounds stellar. Singapore. Okay. Yeah. And India. Ooh, how's that going to go? I don't know if you've been following the drama off the shores of Venezuela, but there's Russian ships going out there. There's these shadow fleet ships, going around because they're taking oil out of Venezuela and they're not supposed to. And the only ships that are supposed to are Chevron ships. You've literally got a Lord of War situation happening there. That was the movie with Nicolas Cage and Jared Leto, and they were running guns in one of these big shipping containers. But they had the guy hauling off the side of the boat, painting a new flag and a new identification on the boat. You've literally got that going on. Those kind of storylines right now off the coast of Venezuela, in the Caribbean, I believe. Because you've got basically an embargo of Venezuela getting their oil out, and that's what taking out Maduro was all about, getting access to the oil, right? Newsom said the plan will help maintain a steady supply and stable prices in the near future. Yeah, but just for the next couple of months. Because Valero, they have no incentive to just we're just going to keep importing it for you guys here, and if they're shutting things down, It's, systems go down. California could still see gas prices soar. Will see gas prices soar once the Benicia Refinery and another in Southern California close permanently. It's the Wilmington one. That's the Phillips 66. Phillips 66 idled its LA area plant in late 2025 and expects to permanently shut down this year in 2026. And here's the actual update. Valero will proceed with idling through a phased approach, starting with its processing units in February, due to required mandatory state inspections. That's what I was talking about earlier, that cannot be deferred. Refinery will continue producing gasoline as it works down the inventories, but expects most refining process units to be properly idled by April. So nothing new here. They said they were going to close in April, but what they're doing is they're basically creating a situation where everything kind of works out timing wise. That's my take on what you've got, and then input from 𝗪𝗧𝗛𝗧 as well. We want to express our appreciation to Valero for continuing to work with us collaboratively to evaluate options for the Valero Benicia Refinery and for maintaining fuel supply to Northern California. Yeah, they're shutting her down and they're doing what they got to do to shut it down. We're not talking options. We're not being collaborative. They've got a contract to fulfill up until the time that they close the refinery down. And so this is what they're doing. And this is just part of that process. They don't just, boom, go down, right? It's not like closing the lights off when I walk out of my office and, it's all shut down. Doesn't happen like that. The California Energy Commission and state partners are working with a variety of market players and stakeholders on necessary steps to protect consumers and support a stable and affordable fuel supply while holistically advancing this critical phase of this energy transition in our path to achieving the state's climate goals. It's the state's climate goals that have pushed out these refineries, and it's the reason that they're closing down. It's just ridiculous goals that are unobtainable, that are just, it's kind of like we're going to ban the plastic bags because they're so bad for the environment. And then we end up using more plastic bags because the really thin ones, everybody just tosses those. And then you got to use the thick ones, and they've got more plastic in them. At the end of the day, you just end up using more plastic. It's logic like that it doesn't work. This doesn't work. A long-term, gradual, very, very gradual conversion to clean energy, All right. Okay. But that's not what California's done, because they want a virtue signal that we're so much better than every other state and we're going to lead the way. Well, what you're going to see is you're going to lead the way in gas prices. I filled up my car yesterday. I'm in Washington State. I'm in Bellevue. I paid $4.59 a gallon. My son told me, he's over in Seattle, a few miles to the west here. He paid $5.09. Gas is $5.09 in his neighborhood. And it's because we virtue signal, we've got this cap and trade thing, and it just makes it super expensive for the refineries to produce gas, diesel, whatever in Washington State. Same darn thing in California, just a little bit different of a version. Bottom line is, rest of the country has gasoline that averages, I think, the average is 3 something, but I am getting numbers all day long in the 2s. And there's gas under 2 in certain areas, right? Here we are paying $4.59. It's because we're so virtuous. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what? I'd rather have a little bit more money in my pocket, and because I'm, I know this is going to be a forever process. If we ever fully, in my lifetime, we won't get off. We won't get off gas and oil. No way. I mean, just absolutely no way. Oh, we're all going to drive around and fly around on little electric cars. No, there will be conversion to that, but it doesn't happen overnight. And yet, what we're working with is a bunch of people that have this ideology that, you're terrible, you're consuming gasoline. It's what we got for right now, and we don't have something to replace it with, period. So, whenever you shut a refinery down like the Valero one here, it's going to have massive ripple effects. And not only to California, but you've got Nevada, you've got Arizona. They get like half and 80% of their fuel from California. And then because California is a massive, massive economy, they produce all kinds of stuff, right? And they need gas and oil products to either make their stuff or get it from point A to point B. And when you restrict that supply by 22% or whatever it's going to end up being, the official reporting indicates 17.5% reduction in supply by closing down both the Valero plant and the Phillips 66 plant that we're talking about. But in reality, it's going to be weighted more heavily on the gasoline side of things, and it's going to be something like 22%. That is my understanding per 𝗪𝗧𝗛𝗪, who's one of the co-authors on basically the Bible of what we're talking about right now. And he is on he and his band, Professor Mishi and Stan, the legislator, their band is on tour right now, and they are on California Insider, I think. And I'm going to try and get all 3 onto this show. I think next week we'll record next week, something like that. So, this is something that's going to be super impactful when it goes down, when these refineries go down, because demand has stayed the same. Supply has been shrunk. Which way do you think pricing's going to go? You got it. El Norte. El Norte. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I'd love to have you subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.